I'm happy to welcome Gilad Buzi to our group. So Gilad has been part of the listserv for a while, but has had a hard time being able to join any of our online meetings because he is farming in Spain. And but he's been interested in what we're doing and offered to present on the mechanization that he's using in his no-till system. And so this is at Aurora del Camp Farm. I know that being in Europe, Gilad has access to a lot of mechanization options that we don't have here in the US at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to learning more. So thanks and take it away.
Okay, thanks, Rue and Claire for hosting. Yeah, every time I get one of your emails, I want to join, and then I sign up sometimes, and then I fall asleep. So it's hard to keep up. But I'm in California now, so I'm somewhat adjusted. Okay, so I'll just jump in. And I'm going to go kind of fast, I think, and we're going to leave time for questions. Is that right? Yeah? Okay. Great. So here we go. Okay, so a little about Aurora del Camp. We're about 8 acres of fields, about 10 or 11 acres total. We do year-round production, so we harvest 52 weeks a year, and we put something in the ground about 48 weeks a year. So we either transplant or plant seed about 48 weeks a year. We're doing about 40 crops, about 150 varieties. About 50% of our produce is direct to our customers. Another 50% is usually direct plus one, meaning we resell to other farmers, or we resell to a center that works with disabled folks that put together kind of CSA baskets, or kind of locally distributed, not some big distribution thing, right? So we're about 3 to 4 field workers, depending on the time of year, but mostly, since our demand is stable, we're pretty much always 3 to 4 workers. And we're very social, of course. Our customers come out. There's a sort of CSA model. I'm not going to get into how we do it, but it's sort of this food hubs, and we serve directly through those. And so lots of our customers come out. Our farms divide into about 22 fields, anywhere between 300 and 3,000 square meters. I don't know the feet translation right now. I can do some translations, but not the meters to feet always. But usually you add a zero, I think. So it's like 3,000 to 30,000 square feet, right? Is that possible? And most of it is outdoors, and we have some of these tunnels that you can see in this picture. I think we have 5. There are 4 here, but I think we have another 1 now. Yeah, we have 5 now. So those are kind of season extension, get a jump start in the season kind of thing, mostly for solanaceous crops. So we've got tomatoes in there now, and peppers and eggplant. Do I need to admit people in, or are you guys doing that? Okay, you guys are good. Okay. So yeah, just another, more maps here. This is kind of to get an idea where we are. This is United States, and we're on the, can you see my cursor, by the way? I don't know. Yeah, okay, good. So, we're here on the Mediterranean coast. We're about, as you can see in this picture, this is the beach down here. So we're about a half mile from the beach, or quarter mile from the beach. So we're right on the coast, and we're right on the Mediterranean. So it never freezes. It's we've got pretty sandy soil, large granular sandy soil. So it's a little different than like a fine sand. As you could tell in some of the pictures of the fields, we've got wild hedgerows, native beneficial insects, and we attract those by leaving things kind of wild. We've got lots of sweet alyssum and wild mustards and things like that. and we only get about 300 or 400 millimeters of rain, so about 12 inches of rain annually. So we're on track for desertification. So if we don't do anything quick, if there aren't changes, we're going to be in trouble, right? And as far as my team, again, we're a diverse team of folks. Yeah, not all these. There's an intern in there, and there's other people, but we're pretty much 4 people from 4 different continents. So it's a pretty diverse team. So as far as how we've worked the fields in the past, of course, we started as a tillage farm about 11 years ago. We just rotivated. We've always been organic, but and certified organic. But we plowed, rotivated. We used these cultivators with the kind of this arrow kind of thing. So a lot of what I'd call kind of horizontal movement through the soil. And we did some cover cropping and stuff, but we had we were causing a lot of problems, right? We were causing a lot of problems with all that tillage, and we still had a lot of pest problems as well, and rain and erosion, of course, as we were as soil structure was breaking down. You have to remember that in our climate, any given field might produce 2 to 7 times a year. So we might go through 2 to 7 crop cycles a year. So if we're doing if we just decide that one field we're going to do like radish and spinach and lettuce, and we could go through a lot of that in 1 year. And so if you're rotivating every time, you're really breaking down a lot of organic matter with that sandy soil, right? I know that's very different than you folks out there in the cold in the north. So at first we were still okay, right? Crops were pretty good and stuff, but and the business was growing. We were getting more customers, but we were slowly, losing, and we were realizing that we were causing problems. And so the some of the major problems we got were weed issues. So persistent perennial weeds. So nut sedge, which is usually something that comes up probably mostly in the summer, we were seeing it from like March to November. Okay, so by moving horizontally through the soil or cutting it up with a rotavator and dragging things along, we were, if we had a nut sedge problem at the edge of the field 1 year, we'd have it all over the field the next year. So we really caused incredible damage as far as weed pressure. For even probably in the first year, we caused problems that will take probably, I'm guessing, around 20 years to remediate. Okay, so nut sedge, of course, was one of the biggest ones, and that's probably our largest problem. And then bindweed also. So both of those are, they'll spread through their roots, through the root nodules or the pieces of roots in the case of bindweed, or the tubers that break off of this chain of tubers in the case of nut sedge. And so we really did a great job of spreading all of these weeds everywhere. And they're not weeds that are easy to smother or to, oculate or whatever. That these are some pretty serious weeds, right? Oxalis too, but less so. Oxalis is sorrel, I think you call it. So also crops start showing problems, nutrient deficiencies and things like that. So we looked. I think one of my big moments was when Gilad Buzi, which is someone I don't think you hear about so much in the States. He's this guy who's I think he's a botanist, but he went and spent 20 years analyzing soil and figuring out what conditions cause what weeds, basically. And he has this whole point system. It's pretty fascinating. And a lot of what he was saying when, he has this book that tells you just look up the weed and it tells you what conditions favor that weed, and we, reduced biological activity, salinization in the soil, all these things, that kind of led me to understand that we're ruining our soil, and that's why we're getting a lot of these weeds, other than the fact that we're mechanically spreading the weeds, right? And of course, models came up, four-tier thing, singing frogs, all these different models that kind of showed a different way of doing things, but they were all on a very small scale. And so, and also there's Rodale and the crimpers and all that. So we really see, it looked like we really need to go in this direction, right? And so we did some experimenting in cover cropping and crimping. It's, like I said before, we're farming, 52 weeks a year. So to put a field into a cover crop to then crimp is like, that's a 6-month investment, but we tried it, and, we did the hair vetch and oat kind of mix, and that was interesting, and mixed results, though we got weedy too, but there were some mixed results. There are great results with that, with landscape fabric, but with just bare crimping was tough. So we needed something. So it wasn't the cover crop crimping thing wasn't really, it's not really for us. We need something faster. We need to be able to produce 52 weeks a year. Cover cropping is kind of like our last resort, especially in the winter. Actually, we use more field space in the winter than we do in the summer, right? In summer, if you think about it, in the summer we have a lot of vertical planting. We have tomatoes and eggplants and peppers and all these plants that are they're producing vertically. But in the winter, we're producing tons of carrot that take a really long time to grow, and they take a lot of space. Lots of spinach, lots of lettuce. We're big lettuce producers, we're big spinach producers, because just 10 miles from us, it's freezing, right? And we're not freezing, so we get to sell that to other folks that can't produce that time of year. So in the winter, when you would do this kind of like vetch oat mix or whatever to crimp, it's not a time of year that we have space. We've done sun hemp in the summer, that's interesting, but we don't have a lot of time to do cover crops. And of course so we have economic pressure because of the rents going up, and also it wasn't a full solution. So if we did crimping, we couldn't direct seed carrots or something like that. We also saw, of course, slug and snail damage, a lot of pressure there. And it limited our mechanization, right? It's kind of like, once you've crimped it down, you've planted, you can't really mechanize much else. So you end up with a situation like in this picture where, if you crimped it a couple days late and the seed became viable and then it rained, then you get sprouting. It was kind of a mess for us. So. And in our climate, to be honest, this cover crop residue, we were talking about hay earlier. Hay just, any kind of straw hay breaks down just way too quickly in our climate. It's just something about the soil and the contact, I think, and just, it's not super hot, but the humidity and the heat break down that kind of cover crop really quickly. And also cover crops require a lot of water. So even in the summer, we'd have to water them a lot. So back to looking at other systems of no-till. So back to deep compost style, or adding a lot of compost, moving the soil as little as possible, but still working with sort of bare soil, you'd say, as a clean slate. But it was obvious we had to add a lot of organic matter. And we're peri-urban, like we said in the description of the talk today, and that means that there are no animal farms around us, meaning within 20 miles or 30 miles, we probably don't have any animal farms, so that's not easy to get a lot of manure. But what we do have is local trees that are grown just by the city for shade, and all along that highway in front of us, there's birch and sycamore, and there's oaks around, there's pine, there's palm trees. There are all kinds of trees around that the city hires out these, tree doctor types that come in, and they'll just go down a whole, 2 miles of highway and start chipping, just trimming trees and chipping. So that's a huge local resource that we tapped into, and that's kind of what's changed our life as far as what we, as far as inputs into the soil, right? And we found a good source of compost. One of those tree doctor types was importing some animal manure, adding these tree trimmings and creating a low nitrogen, high organic matter compost. Okay. So this is what we were going for, right? We need to stop tilling, and we needed to start incorporating a lot of this organic matter into our soil, and let's see what we can do, right? So of course, at first, we built these beds, and we said, okay, let's get the compost, and you can see the trailer there in the background. Dragged it out to the edge of the field and started just wheelbarrowing and spreading compost. I kind of make this joke here with Lucia. I got her to help me out, but it's not fun, right? It's a lot of backbreaking work, and we're talking about 8 acres. I mean, not something you want to be doing by hand. As we get older, not something workers want to do by hand. It's slow, and we're dealing with a lot of acreage. We're not just a salad farm. We're doing a lot of onions. We're doing a lot of potatoes. We're doing winter squash, summer squash. We're feeding a lot of people and a really high diversity of crops. So and we're spread out, and we're doing crops that are kind of a longer cycle, like onions and carrots, and some that are shorter, of course. But we're using a lot of space, so hand spreading was not really something we were looking into. So, or not something that was gonna be very sustainable in the long run. So our system is we evolved to this kind of semi-permanent bed system, a very standard 65 to 80 centimeter tops. And I say that because the bed tops vary depending on the height of the bed. So if I make a higher bed, then we'll have a narrower bed top. Minimizing soil movement, compost on top, kind of like this picture. And then ramial chipped wood in the paths when we can get it. And we do interplanting. I don't know if you can tell here, but we're here in this picture, we're interplanting. There's some cabbage with spinach, transplanted spinach. We're still weeding with the Treflo harrow. That's our favorite tool of choice for weeding. And quick bed flips when we can. And the beds, we call it semi-permanent beds because we do harvest potatoes and sweet potatoes mechanically. So we're using mechanical means to harvest those, which kind of undo the beds, and then we kind of reshape them after that, right? This is a good picture of carrots with lots of ramial chipped wood in the footpaths between the beds. We are tarping, so we're using huge tarps. There's actually 2 or 3 tarps maybe here, but we will set up the beds and we'll tarp. And that's helped us a lot with the perennial weed pressure. What you can see here is a kind of tarping we're tarping. You'll notice we put irrigation under the tarp. So in this case, with all this yellow that you see here is nutsedge. That's a major infestation of nutsedge. And we'll actually water it under the tarp to provoke that nutsedge to provoke its germination and get it to kind of shoot up as much as it can and blow as much of its energy from that tuber as possible, so that when we uncover it, it kind of just dries up, and that's been a good strategy. One interesting thing though is before we'll do this, sometimes before we cover with the tarp, we'll set up the beds or whatever, put the irrigation, and we'll put ramial chipped wood in the paths, right? And since we cover that and we irrigate, we'll get a lot of earthworm activity under there, which is great to see when we uncover. It's just building soil, right? So how do we mechanize all this? A few kind of key tools, and we're building beds with this kind of bed shaper thing over here. that we've developed with the local farmer welder, and we'll get into that. Then we have this compost and ramial chipped wood spreader. We're using a BCS with a Rinaldi power harrow to just do surface finishing kind of on the surface. We have this flail mower to create our own ramial chipped wood from trees on the farm, but also it's our post-harvest kind of cleanup on the top of the beds. And this is our Trefler harrow, which I don't know if people are familiar with, but it's a harrow that can work with raised beds because each tine is independent, so it can, you know, it adapts to the shape of a raised bed. So the bed shaper, there's two discs. They're about 65 centimeters tall, I think, and you can tell here. You can tell here that it's kind of on a hinge system. This roller in the back, this cage roller in the back, is on a hinge system, and the higher you raise it, the higher the bed. So if you lower this system, then you'll have if you lower this whole kind of cage roller here, then you'll have a lower bed, right? And if you raise, you'll have a higher bed, right? So you're controlling the depth with this roller, and that's also flattening. So let me get a video going. Hopefully these videos will work through Zoom, but maybe Rue and Claire can confirm. But and so is that good? Okay. So one thing you'll notice here, and I'll pause it for a second here. Let's see. So remember that I'm pausing it here. Let's see. So remember sorry, it's a little blurry, I know. You can kind of tell in this bed right to the left of where the tractor is working right now, that half of the bed is darker than the right half is darker than the left half, right? And that's kind of interesting. That's because what happens when we've put ramial chipped wood in the footpaths, a big thick layer of ramial chipped wood, and we've kept it there for, you know, 4 months or something. Maybe we've gone through a couple of crop cycles, maybe we've tarped, whatever might have happened. We usually leave it there at least 4 months, 4 or 5 months, depending on the time of year. When you come back with this bed shaper, if you want to reshape your bed, really all you're doing is bringing that broken down ramial chipped wood into the center of the bed. Okay, so what you're seeing here is since in this video I was working from the left-hand side of the screen to the right-hand side, the first bed got ramial chipped wood from both sides of the wheel tracks, but then as I moved to the right, I only got it from half of just from the one side of the wheel path. So, you know, maybe in the perfect world, I'd work with wider, you know, wheel tracks, but in this case, what's interesting is that you can really see this ramial chipped wood going, you know, flying onto the center of the bed. And what I love about that is that, you know, we've kind of just composted in the field. We've created compost, we've built soil in the field through the earthworms and through the ramial chipped wood in those footpaths or in the tire tracks, right? So that's what I really love about the system, is that I'm trying not to move soil, right? I'm trying to just kind of throw the broken down ramial chipped wood into the middle of the bed. Maybe I've gone a little too deep here, but you know, in the perfect world, I'm just really building layers, right? Ramial chipped wood in the footpaths and the tire tracks break down, and then I incorporate into the center of the bed using these discs, right? So that's kind of interesting for me. If you look at the one part of the video, you can see that I'm not really working the center of the bed here though. Okay, let's break that down. Okay, so that's and what's important here is that I'm not dragging horizontally like when I was using a cultivator or obviously a rotavator. No, I'm not dragging things through the field. I'm really just bringing things from the left and right to center. So there's less of a chance of me spreading weed seeds, right? Especially those perennial weed seeds that I had initially brought from the edge of the field to the center of the field, right? So that's important. We're using, I talked about this, you know, the good old flail mower. We're using this for the post-harvest, but also to generate our own ramial chipped wood. And you'll notice this, I don't know if you have these in the States, but this kind of, it's called a forestry flail mower. And it's really used to, you cut branches pretty thick, you know, branches off trees near your field or near the footpath or near the road, and you stick them kind of in the middle of the road and you just drive right over that. And these metal, you see these metal tines in the back or these rods in the back, those keep the branches from kind of sliding through. So it keeps them inside the flail mower so they get chipped up quicker or more effectively, let's say. Okay, so you can, you know, get rid of them if you want, but those are pretty useful for flail mowing. But this is just really a flail mower, just a heavy duty flail mower that can be used to generate ramial chipped wood if you don't have a chipper. And then one of the most important machines, the compost and ramial chipped wood loader and spreader all in one. That's kind of the star of the show today. And that was built by Maquinaria Loce in Valencia, built to our specs. They had machines that were sort of similar, but we had them build it to our specs, and we also distribute it now too, but and I'll go into details in a second. And then for the superficial, you know, bed top conditioning, if you need a really clean seed bed, we're using just the BCS with the power harrow, which is interesting, partially because we have a diverse work crew, so some of them don't have driver's license, and or I wouldn't want to trust them with the tractor, but so it's good to have multiple machines that different people can use, right? So let's look at the spreader, the loader spreader, right? So let me actually do a video, and then we'll talk about the details. Okay. So this is loading. You back up into your pile of compost, and then you go out to the field and you turn it on and start spreading, and it's spreading just to the center, you know, 80 centimeters, 75 centimeters, well, 80 centimeters, that's about 30 inches. So you can tell if you wanted to, you could do a deep compost mulch system here if you wanted to. We're not doing it because it just dries out too quick in our climate. But we could do it, and I think Armand, who's connected here, I'll show a video of how he uses it, and then we could just go in with the Rinaldi power harrow, and we just kind of superficially, you know, mix that, right? So back up, load, and then spread. Let's see if I can get Armand's video here. He does it kind of like this. So this is the same thing. They're spreading, and he's doing more of a deep compost mulch system there. So he's inland. He's more further inland. So maybe it's easier for him to not dry out as much. But I've had a hard time just planting straight into compost just because of the heat and the dryness. So let's look for a second into kind of details, right? So in this hopper, there's this big hopper. It's about 200 gallons, okay, 750 liters in this hopper. And inside the hopper, you have a drum, kind of with a ribbed drum that turns. So that's kind of, you know, that's a way to sort of, you know, you're dosing it correctly. Now you can control the speed of that drum, and so compost kind of goes through there at a certain speed, right? That drum is turned by a hydraulic motor. Okay, so it's a non-electric, it's not PTO driven. This is a hydraulic motor that turns this drum around. And the reason that's good is because if you ever had, you can control the speed, first of all, really well. Tractors usually have hydraulic plugs in them, of course. And also, if you ever got a rock stuck in there, the hydraulic motor will just stop. You don't damage a motor like you would, like if it was PTO driven, it would be a disaster. Something would break for sure every time you got a rock in there. But hydraulic motors are cool. That there are a lot of advantages to them. Of course, you do need a tractor that can handle that. I don't know how many gallons per minute, but it's quite a bit. But you need to have a couple of plugs, of course, and to power it. So you can't just be any old tractor. You can't do this on a tiny tractor. Usually, you need about 50 horsepower at least. And we have, other than the hydraulic motor, we have this piston here. You see this shaft here, this hydraulically driven piston. So that's kind of what's lowering that hopper for you to back into your compost pile. And it's the same hydraulic plugs on the tractor, but you switch. You have this, and if you see this kind of gearbox, hydraulic gearbox here, you're switching between using hydraulics to raise and lower the hopper, or to turn the drum. Okay, so you have this button. You see it near the on-off switch. To the right of the on-off switch is a black button, and you press that button, and that's for lowering and raising the hopper. And if you let go of that button, then you turn the drum. So that's kind of a fancy little switch there. And then we have this other switch. This on-off switch powers a vibrator. So there's a 12-volt vibrator here. So you do need to plug into your electrical system in your tractor. You have this vibrator here, this red vibrator, and that just kind of keeps things, it does two things. It keeps the compost from caving, creating a cave situation. So if you didn't have a vibrator, maybe the drum turning would create a kind of cave, and then the compost would stop falling. But by vibrating just gently, it's a pretty good vibration. It's gentle, but it's very firm. The compost keeps falling, right? So it's important, of course, to get compost the right humidity. Don't ask me what percentage, but that kind of compost humidity, that not too wet, not too dry. Too dry probably wouldn't matter, but you don't want it too wet, because you'd have caking, and then you'd kind of create more of this cave, and even the vibrator wouldn't pull things through, right? So the vibrator is kind of this key. Depends on, the tractor's also vibrating, of course, and you're moving through the field and stuff, but that vibrator gives you that extra consistency in the right doses of compost. So there's a close-up of the vibrator. And it's, of course, you could see this piece of reinforced steel behind it. So it's important. And then one of the best features, one of the funnest features, which I actually, to be honest, didn't realize when I first got this thing, was that, we built this 180 centimeter wide hopper, and we got them to put two plates 50 centimeters each. So you're plugging. So let's see if the cursor. So you can plug the edge, each, left side and right side, you can plug those up. And then you're just dumping into the center 80 centimeters or 30 inches, right? So you could use that to if you want to just apply compost to the center, to the bed top, you would just put the plates, and you can see this plate's falling off here. But you would just put these plates instead of in the middle, you'd put them in the sides, and then you're like in this picture here, you would just be spreading onto the bed top. Okay, but if you switched and you put the plates in the middle, so you put two 50 centimeter plates in the middle, now you're left with two 40 centimeter openings on left and right, which is exactly the width of your tires. So that was just, it wasn't random, Chad. So it's how we developed it, because we went with the width of the tractor for the width of the hopper, and we wanted the 80 centimeter bed for, we wanted an opening for 80 centimeter beds. But then we just drilling a couple more holes, we could, with the first generation of this machine, we were able to put the plates in the middle and then spread ramial tipped wood in the footpaths. So you're either spreading compost on the bed tops, or you're spreading ramial tipped wood in the footpaths, or you can just take the plate off completely and spread ramial tipped wood like on a road, or which is actually something we do because we have a lot of roads, and to avoid erosion, we're actually spreading a lot of ramial tipped wood on the roads around the farm. So this gives us a lot of play, which is great. This tool basically was a huge game changer for us, because we went from that, you remember that picture of Lucia spreading compost? So we went from hand spreading compost, which meant, if we think about it, two people, shoveling compost onto the back of this trailer, then one person driving the trailer on the field, and another person in the back of the trailer spreading the compost, or wheelbarrows. In the smaller fields, we were doing wheelbarrows on the field. So went from two people, very slow work, physically very demanding work, to one person with the tractor, very, very quick, extremely quick, and very consistent too, because as if you're spreading compost from the back of a trailer, what you have to remember is at the beginning of the field, you're kind of spreading lots, and then by the end of the field, you got tired, and you're spreading a thinner layer, right? So this avoids some of these human fatigue issues, right? So part of sustainability for us is really this physical sustainability, right? So maybe there'll be more questions about this machine, but we'll wait till the end. And then the Trefler Harrow, it's kind of a more advanced harrow than a Lely harrow. You can control the tines. You can control the pressure of the tines from 200 grams to 5,000 grams of pressure per tine. Let's see. I'll get this. Oh. Right. So, and what's interesting here is that we can, if we put ramial tipped wood in the footpaths, it doesn't get stuffed up. So the Trefler harrow can just go right through that ramial tipped wood and does no damage whatsoever. Doesn't get clogged up or anything. And our bed tops are being weeded at the same time. If I want to put more or less pressure on the wheel path, I can also do that with just a couple of tricks there. But yeah, so we didn't need to kind of change any sort of weeding strategies in this case, right? Okay, so here's just the picture of the ramial tipped wood with the weeding onions. Sometimes we're still using subsoilers. We're using a subsoiler. Well, often this isn't our subsoiler, by the way. Ours isn't as pretty as this, but we'll take out the center shank, and we'll just keep the two shanks that are behind the wheel path. So we're usually just subsoiling in the wheel paths, or we'll use a broad fork on the bed. Okay, so just I've gone somewhat quickly, but I wanted some time for questions. So positive, obviously we've increased our bed prep and our bed flip like by, I don't know, factor of like 10 or something. There's much less physical strain. We've increased organic matter, of course, because we're adding so much, from 2 to about 4, depending on the field. So we're still in this process. It's going to take years to build it up, but we're slowly reducing perennial weed pressure. So bindweed especially, and it's actually something that Gerard Ducerf guy said. He said bindweed, if you have bindweed, you have to add wood. So I said, oh, okay, so we add ramial tipped wood, and really, it's really reduced our bindweed pressure, this system. Fungal problems, we've really reduced downy mildew, we've reduced a lot, root, soil-borne fungal problems. We have basically eliminated nematodes on the farm. I haven't had any nematode damage in 2 or 3 years. Ants, we had a big ant problem, which of course bring big aphid problems. We've reduced them too because our soil is a little more fungal, and so that fungal diversity in the soil keeps ants at bay as well. And our plants are looking healthy, looking a lot better. And we're spraying a lot less for, like, I never spray for aphids anymore. Basically, if I have somewhat of an aphid infestation, I just wait for beneficials to come in and take care of that, right? Some of the challenges, not everything is rosy. We've had some challenges with bed flips and keeping this sort of the edges or the furrows from keeping those clean, or getting weeds out of there. They don't bother us as much. We're working on a kind of on a weed whacker kind of hood to be able to clean those furrows without spraying onto like lettuce or whatever we have on the bed top. One of the challenges, of course, is getting enough ramial tipped wood. We can get it from like October to February, but it's for now kind of limited in supply. And it's going to be more and more limited, I think, as more composting is getting done. It's going to be a challenge, but I think this kind of it's a bigger topic maybe, but we're going to need to move towards a kind of agroforestry model, a syntropic model where you're integrating more trees into vegetable farming. I think that's going to be something, because we're going to want that wood in the field. So we've seen more wireworm damage. I don't know if that's just, I don't know. We're getting we have some wireworm problems that are pretty difficult to get rid of, where most people's recommendation with wireworm is to till. And technicians usually tell you, well, just till it. That's usually what disturbs their habitat in the spring. That's not something we want to do. And so we're looking into alternatives, using different fungal treatments. And we're looking into inoculating bran with this kind of fungus. And we're experimenting with that a little bit. We're still planting by hand, and I'm not sure, if we'll ever not plant by hand. Our fields are also small, so getting a planter in there is kind of difficult. Our fields are only, some of them are only 150 feet long, so that's, getting a tractor-based transplanter in there is a little complicated. Biodegradable film application is a little bit of a challenge sometimes. I think you can see here in this picture, we're using biodegradable film. So in case there was any doubt there, we don't use any plastic film. We use some weed guard that's plastic, but we don't use any films that are they're plastic. These disappear within like 6 months. So in our climate, at least. In these pictures, you can see a bed flip that didn't come out so clean, and then and also here potatoes, where before we hill the potatoes, in this case, we've actually threw ramial tipped wood on the between the beds, and we kind of hilled with the ramial tipped wood in there. So okay, so that's about it. I think one thing I wanted to mention, the costs a little bit of some of this machinery. Let's see. So what it costs us, and this is maybe pre-pandemic prices a little bit, because of steel has gone up. So this is about, I'm going to try to translate to dollars. So this is about $2,000 for this bed shaper. The fancy loader spreader is about $4,500, I think, maybe between $400 and $4,500. Yeah, the harrows, it really depends on the width of the harrow, so that doesn't even matter the price. And then some of these mulching ramial chipped wood flail mowers, yeah, they're about 4,000. Actually, now they've gone up a lot. Those have really gone up a lot since since the pandemic with steel prices. So those are probably more like $5,000 now. And then I don't know, BCS, you all know the price of those, I guess, in the States. So do you want to open it for questions, or what do we want to, since I've tried to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, but
Yeah, we definitely have time for questions, so people should feel free to unmute and ask, or if you want to raise your virtual hand or your real hand, you can do that, or just post in the chat. And I'll start off with a question that Carl asked in the chat about whether you've considered a Jang planter or paper pot transplanter system.
yeah, we use a Jang planter for carrots and radish and spinach. Yeah, so that works. Yeah, that's no problem. Paper pot, we don't work with paper pot mostly because it doesn't. Okay, so paper pot we don't work. We've tried it. We tried it once. It doesn't work with a tine weeder so well because you end up catching one of those paper chains, and then it's like a zipper. You just lift the whole bed's worth of paper chain. So since you want to go in and start weeding like 4 days after, 5 days after with a tine weeder, you have the paper pot hasn't had time to root really well. And also in our soil, you can't use drip with paper pot. It just it doesn't penetrate. So you'd have to overhead sprinkler everything, which is a lot of water. And yeah, it just doesn't, it hasn't worked out. I mean, I like the idea. It would be great if you, what would be better is like a T-tape type system where the chains are broken as they're being planted. So big companies, if anybody can look up Plant Tape or something. Plant Tape is a company that does these. But I think the Curly's guys told me once that he was Curly's Ag in Australia told me he was working on a paper plant transplanter that would actually break the chains as they were being planted. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, I'd love something like that, of course, in the future. But for now, it doesn't quite work for us.
Uh-huh. Dylan raised his hand. Do you want to go ahead, Dylan? And then Peter after that.
Yeah, thanks. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about your fertility management. Do you see any nitrogen deficit when you're flipping those wood chips into the beds?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So one thing to remember so of course nitrogen sequestration was big, was a big worry, of course, when you're using ramial chipped wood, because you're putting it in there green, right? You're really adding a green into the field. But remember, I'm not adding it to the bed top, and I'm not incorporating it for like 4 or 5 months. So from that point of view, you don't have any, there's no fear of nitrogen sequestration or whatever you call it. I don't worry about that at all. Okay, and as you saw in the video, when I incorporate that ramial chipped wood into the bed, it's usually pretty broken down. And so it's already in its kind of stabilized form, and the earthworms have really done their job there, right? So I try to get ramial chipped wood with lots of leaves in it, so a lot of green matter in it too. So if I did incorporate it into the bed, I probably would get some nitrogen sequestration, right?
Yeah, I guess part of why I'm curious about it is, as the ramial wood chips get harder to find, and, for us, like I would be creating my own wood chips, and then I don't, I think I would be needing to use larger material and stuff. And so, yeah, it's I think still a concern. But how are you otherwise for your heavy feeding crops? How are you applying and incorporating fertilizer?
Yeah, I didn't talk about that at all. So oftentimes, depending on if they're heavy feeders, light feeders, etc., we will add pelletized nitrogen. So either vegetable-based or animal-based. I don't know what you'd call it here, but it just, like a N10, a 10% nitrogen pelletized product, or 8%. or if we don't really need phosphorus or potassium anymore. We're totally fine with just the compost. The compost applications have given us enough on that. But if they're heavy feeders, I'll add nitrogen with pelletized before. I tried adding it into the compost in the hopper, kind of, but it doesn't. Yeah, we just kind of spread it by hand before we'll spread the compost and mix in with the Paro Harrow. So I'm not we don't do any further irrigation. We don't fertilize at all during the crop cycle. We're front loading all our fertility. So I don't do any foliar stuff. I don't do any like side dressing. We just we just let it ride and think of, and to our credit, I mean, it's working because we plant tomatoes in February in the ground in these tunnels that we saw in the picture, and we're still harvesting February of the next year. So fertility, we're okay, so yeah. Anyway, I'm no expert on fertility, but basically what we do is we're feeding heavy feeders, and we play with the with the compost and the pellets. So our compost is about 1.5% nitrogen, so it's pretty low. It's pretty low. Yeah.
So we've got a few questions in the chat. Peter wanted to know if you think the manufacturer of the compost applicator would sell the plans rather than trying to ship those spreaders across.
I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean, I think more than the plans, I think what you need is someone who can really build it. This stuff isn't you need to know hydraulics really well. You need to know obviously welding and mechanics but it's not, this is all, they just took standard pieces like this vibrator. You can just find a vibrator, a 12-volt vibrator. They're not hard. I'll give you a clue. This is all Italian stuff, right? This hydraulic motor is Italian. The vibrator is Italian. These are all, I can even find the names and just send it to you all if you want. But you need to know what you're doing to build it. I think the plans, I think that's secondary, to be honest. I think you just need to know how to put things together, hydraulics together. I don't think the actual like CAD plan will give you much,
Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind, one thing that maybe I should mention also about one handicap that I didn't mention of the loader is that it's very back heavy, right? So you need to add weights to the front of your tractor usually, or if you have a bucket loader or something, that helps too, right? But we didn't have a bucket loader, so we thought, well, we'd have to either buy a bucket loader and then some sort of trailer thing, and then it'd be hard to turn. So this compost spreader is really it's a compact compost spreader that allows you to work in small fields and suspend it on the tractor, so you're not dragging anything. You can have really tight turns and things like that. More questions?
Yeah, so Andres had a question about green manure strategies in a mild winter climate like yours.
Yeah, not sure maybe he wasn't there in the beginning. I'm not sure, but we've moved away from doing cover cropping or green manure in the winter because it just takes up too much space and time. So we do probably going to be ending up doing more cover cropping in the summer than the winter. So in the winter we need our space because we're growing so much for everybody else there. We sell a lot more in the winter than we do in the summer. So in the summer, we actually have a hard time selling because we serve Barcelona and everybody goes on vacation. So all our clients go on vacation in the summertime. It's a total disaster. But so our fields in the winter are just dedicated to producing. So we do, a couple acres of carrots a year and spinach, and we're just producing in the winter. Yeah, so it's different from I think maybe you're in Germany by your name, but anyway.
And then back to the Ramiel wood chips, Peter had a couple of questions. How many times per year do you have to add those, and what quantity do your applications add up to, either in cubic meters or tons per hectare? We can do the conversion.
Yeah. It depends a lot. I mean, I would add, let's just say this. So I'll add in the furrows or in the tire tracks or whatever you want to call them, I'll add about this much. So I'm adding about, I don't know, that's about 15 centimeters, 20 centimeters. Okay. And, if we can, and if we have enough, and I usually won't do more than once a year on the same field. So we'll do it once a year, but we're adding a thick amount, very thick amount. That breaks down incredibly fast. It just, it helps while it's green because it helps with soil, with moisture retention and erosion protection, but it really breaks down to nothing by the end of 6 or 7 months in our climate. So we're adding, so, you could say like 15 centimeters by like 40 centimeters wide. You can do the numbers. So, we're adding quite a bit, but it just really just disappears. I mean, even the pictures you see, it goes nowhere, And someone told me recently, a woman who runs a composting operation, she said from 3,000 cubic meters of ramial chipped wood, I get 150 cubic meters of compost. That's like 5%. And so ramial chipped wood breaks down, so, a lot. But the woodier, the better, the more fibrous, the better. It'll break down less and less. And it also depends, of course, on how much leafy material is in there. If they trimmed a tree in October, it's better than if they did in December because you'll have more leaves that come in there. So it all depends. There's no exact science around all this stuff, but just put as thick of a layer as possible. Yeah. But mostly just once a year.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting to think about those differences in the material you're getting, just because you're getting it from municipal sources, and there's going to be that variation year round in the trimmings.
Yeah, I mean, trimming season is October to February about. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So we're adding. Let's just. I know for our farm, like this year, we added probably about 200 cubic meters. hard to say how much that is per square meter or whatever, but that's what it is mostly. What else? Yeah, Andras. Okay, so yeah, I know who you are. So yeah, he came in late. What else?
Can I ask another question? Can you give us some more specs on the Tefler harrow and maybe differences between the like Aerostar or Einbach tine weeders that we're more used to over here, and the width, pricing, how you adjust it, what kind of drip tape you have that it's not, as Peter said, it's not ripping that up, and
Okay, so the Treffler, there is a dealer in the U.S. Anna and Jos are dealers in the U.S. of Treffler. We're actually Treffler dealers in Spain and Portugal. But so the Treffler, the main difference, and what makes it just a completely different tool from Einbach or Aerostars or whatever they're called, is that the tine and the spring are two different elements in a Treffler harrow. In an Einbach, Aerostar or Lely or whatever, the tine and the spring are one piece. Okay, so why is that so important? That's important because if you were to use an Einbach or Aerostar, if you had a raised bed, that tine would go up and the spring would apply more pressure, right? So you'd actually be applying more pressure on the bed top than you would in a furrow. Okay, if you had a raised bed, or if you're going uphill or downhill, or left or right is uneven or whatever, right? And in the Treffler harrow, the spring is separate, so you adjust the tension separately, meaning that you can, and the spring is not connected at the top of the tine either. It's separately, it's connected about 10, 15 centimeters down, meaning it's kind of on a hinge there. So it doesn't affect the up and down of the tine, doesn't affect the pressure too much, just a little bit. It's hard to explain, right? But
So you can
Basically,
adjust the cant of the tine and the pressure of the spring separately?
exactly. I mean, the cant of the tine you're just adjusting by lowering and raising or lowering the body of the harrow, and then the spring you're adjusting by just tightening this bar, right? There's lots of videos online. I have one in Spanish. If you look at our YouTube, just look at Aurora del Camp YouTube or something. I have an explanation in Spanish. Maybe you can do the subtitles or something. But also, Anna and Jos probably have some videos where they explain it in English. Yeah, look up Treffler, Harrow. I don't know, but it's very versatile, right? So it can work when we have those raised beds. It can work through the ramial chipped wood. It can work through direct seed. You can just adjust 200 grams of pressure. So if you direct seed something like, I don't know, even a spinach after seeding, you could even go through there and harrow just lightly before germination. Or obviously fava beans or potatoes, all that we harrow before emergence or even post emergence. So transplants, you can work with transplants, and you can work with, yeah. Anyway, I think someone said they have a Treffler harrow. It's great. Okay, yeah, it was basically a life changer for us when we got it too. Yeah. So let's see what else.
So Andres shared a link to a self-loader compost spreader from Broadfork Farm.
Yeah, and actually that one was an inspiration for us. We saw that. I think they, yeah, I'd seen that, and that was actually one of the places we'd got inspiration from, and I had to find someone that's kind of buy me or build something similar for us. And luckily found Lose here but I don't know that they build theirs or they sell theirs. I know that somebody else was trying to build one. But anyway, I see a question here. I don't know if I should just jump at the questions I see, or I could. Okay. How long do we leave the tarps? That depends, as long as possible. And it depends on the kinds of weeds we're trying to kill. So if it's summertime for nutsedge, for purple nutsedge, like if I could leave it for 3 months, I'd leave it on there for 3 months. But it depends how much time we have. So we also are using 130 gram per square meter landscape fabric, and that keeps nutsedge down as well. So we kind of rotate between crops that can use the landscape fabric and not. Obviously you're not going to do onions with landscape fabric or something, but if you're doing tomatoes, we'll do tomatoes with landscape fabric. And if we know we have like a kind of weedy or a nutsedge infested field, that we'll rotate into that with landscape fabric. If we don't have time and space to do the occultation with the tarp. What else? I don't know if should I scroll up? Are there any questions in the chat I missed?
No, I think we've gone through them all. Yeah.
So something about the rear. Okay. Yeah. A modified manure spreader. I mean, Dylan mentions that. If I had huge fields and really long fields, and I had a bucket loader, and obviously I'd get a lot more volume, a lot more bang for my buck as far as volume that I could, gallons per load. If I used just a regular modified compost spreader, and I could modify it to also spread wood chips, I'm sure, but that wasn't really an option, not with our small fields, So now with our small fields and just the way the farm is set up is just, this is definitely, machinery for medium scale, right? So we're kind of this kind of 8 to probably 20 hectare or 20 acre pieces of land, so. All right.
Thank you, Gilad. That was a really lovely presentation. Thank you
Good.
for detail. It's really interesting to see how all the different parts of your system work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really